Welcome to Worldview Matters, discussing controversial issues, discerning current events, defending biblical Christianity. No topic off limits. And now, here's your host, David Fiorazo.
Friends and family in Christ, welcome. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And I want to share some good news right off the top. And our guest today, Olivier Melnik with Shalom in Messiah Ministries. We'll get to him in a minute. There he is. But I want to make sure you know that we now have the website for the conference up and running. It is live. You can register and get tickets for the Worldview Matters Conference. There it is. And we've got Olivier coming to Green Bay, Wisconsin. And it's not going to be winter. So the Texan won't freeze when he comes up here. So there it is, Olivier and many other great guests, including we just added Alex Newman and Brianna Clausen from Harbinger's Daily and more. So you can go to worldviewmattersconference.com. That's worldviewmattersconference.com. And we'll tell you more about it as the weeks go on. But Olivier, brother, thank you so much for your time today. Good to see you.
Hey, happy to be on your show again. And I think it's the first of 26 for you and I. So Happy New Year.
It's still a Happy New Year. Yeah, we're moving through January. So we're going to talk about a couple of different things today. But before we do, there's so many people I talk to. Did you just recently take a trip to Israel? Weren't you just there in the last couple of months? And if so, tell us about that.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I was. I took a group to Israel of about 43 people for regular tour in end of October of last year. It was a great tour. Tourism is still slowly picking up, so we didn't have a lot of traffic. There was a lot of space to do things, and it was just great. It was a wonderful thing. We have another one that we are putting together for October of this year, October 23rd through the 2nd of November. This one is going to be an incredible one because in the middle of the tour, Brandon Holthouse, Tom Hughes, and I are putting together a prophecy conference with special guests in the Galilee. So it's going to be absolutely incredible. We have a tour and a prophecy conference in Israel, and it's going to be very, very exciting. So they can find out on our website.
Okay, shalominmessiah.com. So Olivier, let's just jump right into we want to talk maybe about New York, Mamdani, the red-green axis. Great article on your website, by the way. But how does the Synagogue of Satan play into the biblical worldview? How does that fit? We know it's mentioned in Revelation. We don't hear many teachings on that. And so go ahead and just start.
Yeah, well, the reason why we bring this up, David, we don't want to throw that term out like it sounds like it's in a vacuum. Like, let's talk about that today. That sounds like a fun topic. What happened is that on the night of January 10th in Jackson, Mississippi, a young man, Stephen Pittman, not Jewish, by the way, young man got into a synagogue, set it on fire, and the only synagogue in Jackson, Mississippi, which was already attacked once in the 60s for supporting the civil rights movement. But that's another story. So it set the thing ablaze. They lost several of their Torah scrolls, most of their library, a lot of damage, no lives, no injuries, which was good. But he did it, and he was caught within a day. His father gave him up, I think, gave him away. But when he was caught, when he was asked why he did it, he just did not even hide. He said, well, he did it because they have Jewish ties in that building and because they are a synagogue of Satan. And then almost in the same breath, he said that Jesus is Lord. So that is a real problem because we already have, as believers, the Christian community has a very bad reputation to rebuild with the Jewish community over the last 2,000 years. And when things like this happen, especially at a time where the Jewish community is so desperate for some sense of security, some sense of safety, where Jews don't know where to go. and they're always watching their backs right now in 2026, since October 7th of 2023, this creates a real problem. And the problem is caused by this scripture taken completely out of context. On my desk, I have a coffee mug. I should pull it out because I always talk about it, but I don't show it. I stole the idea from Andy Wood's desk. It says, I can do all things through a verse taken out of context. And it's I love that coffee mug. But a verse taken out of context can be annoying, but not damaging. It can be like, that's not the context. The context is this, not that. You're pushing your agenda, but very often it's not a big deal. It's like small stuff, small potatoes. But in the case of this one, that verse has and can become lethal again. And the synagogue of Satan is found twice. That term is found twice in the first few chapters of Revelation. 2:9, I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich, and the blasphemy by those who say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. And then in the next chapter, 3:9, it's easy to remember, 2:9, 3:9.
Wow.
Behold, I'm giving up those of the synagogue of Satan, those who say that they are Jews, but are not, but lie. So we have a description here. This is, it appears to be a synagogue. Now, what's a synagogue? When you think synagogue in modern time, you think Jewish place of worship and community gathering for weddings, bar mitzvahs, and different events and Jewish holidays. Back in the day when this was written, they used in the Koine Greek, the word synagogue, which is different from church. Church, the word is ekklesia. That's a different word. Synagogue, at the core, the meaning of the word is simply assembly, gathering, get together. And it could include, and it did back in the days when they first started using the word, it included assemblies of Jews and Gentiles together. So it did not have back then the strict meaning of a building, of a Jewish community when they hold services for within the tenets of Judaism, and so the word simply means an assembly or a gathering. As a matter of fact, if you go to James 2:2, in James 2:2, it talks about, for if a man comes into your assembly with a gold ring and dressed in bright clothes, so on and so forth. And so in that context here, the word assembly in James is the word synagogue. It can mean simply assembly. So we have to forget the idea of modern day synagogue. It's just a gathering. That's the first thing. Then people go like, well, it's conflict between Christianity and Judaism. Well, you have to remember, back in those days, it was more of an intramural, intra-family argument. All the gospel writers, except for Luke, they all were Jewish, and even Luke, we're not even so 100% sure. They're all Jewish context, Jewish audience. It was a family discussion. There was not Christianity versus Judaism. Christianity in the early in its infancy was Jewish. It was biblical Judaism fulfilled. That's what it was. And so you've got those two terms here, those two verses that talk about the synagogue of Satan, and people are going, see, this is a description of how evil and demon-possessed the Jews are. Jesus calls them the synagogue of Satan. So the next question, David, is, who is Jesus speaking of? Well, scholars and theologians are divided, and either can actually work in the context. I have a preference. I'll tell you why in a minute, but let me give you both. It's either a group of unbelieving Jews who are fighting the Messianic believers, and they don't agree with their following the teaching of Jesus, of Yeshua, and they're like in the way, and there is tension, there's arguing. So it's either that, or it's a group of Gentile Jew wannabes. And we have a modern version of this nowadays called the Hebrew Roots movement. But so it's a group of Gentile Jew wannabes who want to in essence, back then, let's convert to Judaism and get circumcised, and because this is what needs to happen, so we can get into the family of God and get saved, and so they missed the point of saved by grace through faith alone, and Acts 15, the Jerusalem Council takes care of that, or tried to take care of that. So either a group of Jews going after Jewish believers, or a group of Gentiles pretending to be Jews going after believers in general. And I'm opting for the second one simply because Jesus, in his own words, told us twice now, they call themselves Jews, but they are not, and they are liars. So I'm thinking it seems to be describing more of a group of people pretending to be Jewish and going through the motions just to pretend to be spiritual enough so that they can be saved, which of course goes against the gospel. The final point, because we have other topics, I don't want to get too long here.
Oh, no problem.
The final point on this, David, is that, so it could be either or. It doesn't matter who the audience was at the time. What matters is that anti-Semites over the ages have taken that verse and applied it to Jewish people in a negative, nefarious way, saying, hey, see, the Jews are demon-possessed. They cannot be trusted. The synagogue of Satan. I mean, you look at Candace Owens, she's used that terminology. She said the synagogue of Satan, the Talmudic Jew. She uses that, and in that context. But here's a problem with doing it that way. One of the problems is that it is not to be seen as normative and universal. It's not a continual thing. Like when God said, you shall not kill, or love your neighbors as yourself, that's pretty much a statement that he made that still goes for today. It's still valid today. That is not just historical, it's normative. It's part of what God wants us to, how he wants us to behave as believers. And it's repeated in the law of Messiah beyond the law of Moses. So we know it's an ongoing thing. But this synagogue of Satan, this assembly that was influenced by Satan, really, that's what he says. It was a historical event, and it cannot be applied to all Jews of all time universally. Yeah. And by saying it that way, it's the same as saying, hey, and I'll give you a personal story. My mother, her father was taken by the Gestapo when she was 16, and they came to the house, the Nazis, took my grandfather, took him, put him on a train, took him, sent him to Auschwitz, murdered him there. And because of that, I will not step foot in Germany. I will not speak to a German person. I will not have anything to do with anything German, because all Germans are Nazis. It's the same logic.
So clarify something. It's disturbing to hear some of them talk about the synagogue of Satan and take it so out of context, because if you just read the text, I mean, first of all, back up, Revelation 2 and 3, these are letters. Jesus is speaking to Christian believers in Christ, Christian churches, the early churches in Asia Minor. And so in these two cases, in Smyrna and in Philadelphia, where the synagogue of Satan is mentioned, both times does it not say those who say they are Jews and are not? So
he's describing.
I don't know how you go ahead.
He's describing a group of people pretending to be Jews, I think, but there is room for the possibility of, you could take it the other way by saying, like, well, when Jesus speaks in Galatians 6:16 of the Israel of God, we say, well, the Israel of God there is not the church. The Israel of God in Galatians 6:16 is a Jewish person, ethnically Jewish, like myself, who has accepted the claims of Yeshua as the Messiah, Savior of the world. So I did that 42 years ago. So I am part of ethnic Israel by virtue of being Jewish, but I'm also part of the Israel of God of Galatians 6:16. So it could be argued that when Jesus speaks of those fake Jews, or they're not Jews, maybe he meant they're not Jews because they're not believers. The believers are the true Israel. The Jewish believers, not the Christians. The Jewish believers are the true Israel of God. So maybe he meant that. That's possible. But again, the most important part about the whole thing is that it is historical and it cannot be normative on and on and on and universal for all Jews of all times. That's the part that most people miss.
Okay, friends, if you want to dive into this a little bit more in depth than what Olivier just explained, he's got an article on his website. It's called Who Really Belongs to the Synagogue of Satan? And that is not Olivier's hand, even though he said it was. It's not. So go to shalomandmessiah.com. There we go. We just proved it. We just proved it. Yes. So don't believe Photoshop and all that. So go to shalomandmessiah.com, click on blog. You can get to his other articles as well, including, but not limited to, the article on Mamdani and what's going on in New York, his true colors, and you've got him in green and red. Explain that, the red-green axis, which today, Olivier, think about 20 years ago, I think people would have probably maybe laughed at you if you said, someday Islam and communism are going to work together. And you know what I mean? People go, are you kidding me? But here we are today. Can you touch on that very briefly, please?
Yeah, 20, 30 years ago, only a few people dare mention this red-green axis and not be looked at as crazies. And one of them is a lady. She's an intellectual and a great lady. Her pen name is Bat Eor, and she wrote a great book called Eurabia, and she wrote that book in the mid-70s, saying like Europe is becoming Eurabia, and then give it another 20 or 30 years, and it will be gone. And look where we are. She's still alive. She's in her mid 80s, and she spoke of that red-green axis, I believe, in her first couple of books. She's written many books. The red-green axis is basically this collaboration between the left, communist, socialist, Marxist, something that of course, Mamdani does not hide. And the green, which is the Islam, Islamic or Quranic groups in the world, which he also doesn't hide because he claims to be a Muslim. Now, how both could exist or coexist in the same person, that to me is a little puzzling, because when you really do a deep dive on the tenets of both, and what makes the Marxist tick and what make the radical Islam, there's a lot of disconnect, and they have different. They're on two sides of a spectrum ideologically, and again, we're only seeing this liberal and radical Islam. Or I'm tired of saying radical Islam. It's Islam, okay? It's not radical Islam. It's Quranic Islam. Quranic Islam. Yeah. That's what it is. You follow the words of the Quran, you have no choice but to be a radical Islam, period. Yeah. And a radical Islam is different from a radical Christian. A radical Christian is somebody who's on fire for Jesus. He wants to see people saved. He wants to see people in heaven for eternity. A radical Muslim has no problem lying, killing. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
No, I agree, and that's because there's this understanding that there are some Muslims that are like nominal. In other words, they don't follow the Quran or the Hadith or the teachings of Muhammad or the traditions and all that.
They're cultural. They're cultural Muslims.
Well, they're cultural Christians too.
It's like me. Even though I was born by blood, I was Jewish. Mom and dad were Jewish. As far as religiously speaking, I was a cultural Jew. Didn't go to synagogue. Didn't do Hebrew school. It was like we didn't care. That's not the way I was raised. We didn't keep kosher. I've never felt more Jewish than since I found my Messiah. Just a little side note here, the Jewish Messiah, Yeshua. But so we've got this Mamdani guy who is trying to reconcile both enemies of Israel, or I should say two of the many enemies of Israel. Yeah. That's more accurate currently. And we need to keep an eye on that Mamdani guy, because he's doing he's not hiding things. He's not saying one thing and doing another like a lot of people did in the Middle East, and starting in the 60s all the way through the last maybe 10 years, saying, like Arafat was famous for speaking something in Arabic to Al Jazeera and speaking something in English for MSNBC or CNN or Fox or whatever. And there were two different messages when you thought it was the same thing. Uh, and so he's not hiding his true colors. They're revealed within minutes of taking office. He said he was no longer supporting the definition, the accepted definition for anti-Semitism. He was reopening, he said anybody who wants to promote BDS in New York is welcome to do it. The boycott of Israeli, organizations and goods. He said that's no problem. He even said things in a leaked memo, and I have that in a couple of articles prior to that one on our blog about Mamdani. You can find it. He said in the leaked memo, it was not supposed to be found, that if he had his ways, he didn't say if he had his way, but on his wish list is to take the 501c3 status from organization who do anything to support the IDF. Like our organization,
Wow.
Shalom and Messiah, we go to Israel, we bring supplies, we buy equipment, we buy supplies, defensive only, but we still buy a lot of stuff through our donors at Shalom and Messiah. And if I was in New York and he had the way to do it, he's the mayor, he can't do it. He would do that. But see, what people don't think about is that Mamdani is not just wanting to be the mayor. He's acting as if he was already like the governor of New York. And I think his aspirations are to become the governor of New York and then just spread the tentacles of his ideologies, not ideology because he's going both, which will be very, very nefarious for Israel. And for New Yorkers, a lot of people are leaving right now.
Okay, I want to read something from just the very beginning of that article and let people go there and get more. And then I have a question to ask you about this. You say within hours of being sworn in. By the way, friends, if you have not heard, I hope most of you know that Mamdani was sworn in on the Quran, not on the Holy Bible. This is America. He was sworn in on the Quran as New York City's mayor, and he immediately revoked 9 executive orders put in place by Eric Adams, the previous mayor. Now, this includes Order 51, which was established to combat anti-Semitism. So, Olivier, the question is, I can't imagine all New Yorkers going along with this. This guy didn't fly under the radar. He was campaigning. You heard pretty much by his language that what he wanted to do, but yet he got enough votes. How do you make sense of that? Now, let me, additionally to my question, is part of the answer what you wrote about in the normalization of anti-Semitism? Is it's become that normalized that they just listen to him and go, yeah, I agree with Mamdani. Is that part of it?
The meaning... what defines Jewish identity in the 21st century is shifted from what defined Jewish identity 20, 30, 40 years ago. Jews, especially in America, I think, Jews today are not connected to their heritage from a spiritual perspective, and many of them, 15% of the Jewish people are religious. So there are many of the Jews are not related to their Jewish heritage from a spiritual perspective. They're also not really connected with Israel. So the land, the people, it's not a big deal to them. So it's more about Jewishness, a bagel and a couple of Yiddish words. But then you want to push the social justice because it gives you this self-righteous feeling that you're doing something right, even if it goes against everything that is written in the Bible, and if it goes against Israel's right to, the self-determination and right to exist. So a Jew today can be a self-defeating Jew. I recently found out, David, and it broke my heart, that in 1993, Steven Spielberg, when he did the movie in 1993, Schindler's List, which I still think to this day is one of my absolute favorite movies. That hasn't changed. He said, I cannot take any of that money. It's blood money. I will have to start a foundation, and we'll use the money from that to educate against racism, anti-Semitism, and about the Holocaust. And I thought, hey, you know what? Bravo. I would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
So he did. And so that foundation has raised millions of dollars. And recently, 650,000 and I have all the documentations if anybody's interested. 650,000 of that money that he raised was donated to another organization known as Teruah, T'_RUAH, Teruah, and whose CEO does not believe Israel has the right to exist and believes that Hamas has the right to fight and is pro-Hamas. That's Steven Spielberg's foundation sending money. So we have a Jew who did Schindler's List in 1993, 20, 33 years ago. And now it's like, to him, being Jewish is maybe having a Jewish name, eating a bagel, and promoting social justice, even if it throws a lot of Israel and the Jews under the bus. Wow. That's where we are.
Boy, that sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it?
It sure is.
Yeah, I don't understand.
I mean, there is another group known as Neturei Karta. I think it's Keeper of the Gates, and they're a group of Orthodox that live in Israel, and they absolutely do not believe that that they are anti-Zionist Jews. That's another contradiction in terms. Yeah. But they're a disgrace, but they're a very small group. But Steven Spielberg has done so much good with that movie, and he started a lot of good things, and now he's promoting this. He's funneling, funding anti-Jewish pro-Hamas groups. David, I don't know what to think anymore.
Okay, real quick, Olivier, we've just got 2 minutes left. I knew it would go by fast with you, brother. You did a video with Brandon Holthaus, who I've got coming up in a few weeks. Again, I love this brother. And by the way, he does work for the IDF and supports Israel as well. And the title over on your YouTube channel is The Remnant Church Crumbling Under Pressure. Now, if it just said, is the church crumbling under pressure, I would kind of understand that. But when you say the remnant church, can you kind of just explain that briefly?
By the way, Brandon and I actually are partners in ministry in Israel. We rent a property and we do things together. Every time I go to Israel, I go with some of his staff. We join forces, and it's just he's a wonderful man of God. There's only one Brandon. He's incredible. I am so blessed to know him. I got a phone call from him the other day, and he was really upset, trembling on the phone. He's going, Olivier, people in my own church have been teaching them for over 4 years about Israel, about the truth, and now they're turning. They're saying the Holocaust was not 6 million. They're saying this is inflated, conflated. This is not. Goes, I don't know what to do, Olivier. It's my own people, and you know how bold I am about all those things. So the remnant churches, those who support Israel, the true Christians, that will come to the surface at the time of the apostasy, which I think we're right now, and even in that. It's starting to crumble. It's very scary.
We need to pray, and we need to make sure we're in our Bibles. Discernment is one of the words of the year. ShalomInMessiah.com. Olivier Melnik. We will talk to you again soon, my friend. Thanks for your time.
God bless you.
Thanks, brother. Friends, thank you again. Look up the WorldviewMattersConference.com and Olivier and others coming to Green Bay. But thank you so much for sharing the podcast. God bless you. And as always, keep speaking the truth about things that matter.